Mycenae will always be remembered for being the home of Agamemnon, the king of kings, and the home of those who conquered Troy. However, Mycenae lived prosperously for many years before Agamemnon's rule, which can be seen through the findings at our first burial site, Grave Circle A, in the Mycenaean Citadel. Dated to circa 1550 to 1450 BC, Grave Circle A was incorporated in the walls of the citadel circa 1250 BC. The 13th century rulers of Mycenae probably redesigned the grave circle as a monument to the heroic past of their ancestors. While Mycenae was never lost, the grave circle was only discovered by Heinrich Schliemann in 1876. The grave circle contained the remains of 19 individuals in 6 perpendicularly cut shaft graves about 8 yards deep. The shaft graves contained nearly 40 pounds worth of gold in all of the artifacts, including the famed mask of Agamemnon. From Grave Circle A, we move only 1,000 feet to the south, to the treasury of Atreus, also called the Tomb of Agamemnon. 2nd century AD travel writer Pausanias originally thought that the tomb was one of King Atreus' treasure houses, hence the name the Treasury of Atreus. The tomb is in the tholos style, which resembles a beehive. There are over 100 similar tombs across Greece. However, this one is one of the best preserved tholos tombs of the 9 that encompass Mycenae. The chamber tomb was also a tomb used by Mycenaeans that resembled a tholos tomb. However, a chamber tomb is not dome-like in structure and is typically smaller and is sealed off without a door. A tholos tomb is dug into the side of a hill and is used exclusively by the royal family. This tholos tomb was erected circa 1350 BC, just before the construction of the citadel, and is the latest to be constructed. In tradition with the tholos tomb design, the treasury of Atreus has 2 main parts, the dromos, which is the unroofed entrance, and the tholos, the circular room with the cone-shaped roof. The dromos, 20 feet wide and 120 feet long, opens up to the entrance wall, nearly 34 feet tall, and with a door 18 feet tall. The lintel, the limestone piece of stone above the doorway, weighs nearly 120 tons. It is topped by a relieving triangle that reduces the weight on the stone piece to prevent it from breaking. The tholos was originally equipped with a bronze-covered wooden double door that led into the magical chamber. The inside of the tomb is almost 50 feet wide and rises up to a height of roughly 4 stories at 43 feet. The walls are smooth and would probably have been covered decoratively in gold or silver or bronze. There are no internal supports to carry the weight of the roof, an impressive engineering feat at this time. The dome structure was the largest in the ancient world until it was exceeded by the Pantheon in Rome nearly 1,500 years later. The corbelled stonework is one where the stones that are placed on top of the preceding level are smaller in size. This eventually gives the dome its beehive dome shape. Compare the size of the stones at the top and those at the bottom of the tomb. The final element of the tomb is the 20 square foot chamber that was once covered in bronze sheets. However, the tomb has been plundered since antiquity and nothing remains to this day. While the expensive and luxurious remains of the tomb have been plundered, the grandiosity of the tomb still survives as a testament to the power and wealth of the Mycenaean civilization.
As early as the Iliad, Homer has sung about Mycenaean burials and practices. We learn at Patroclus' burial of the sacrifice of 4 horses, and how when Achilles died, he was buried with a full set of armor. But just as Homer's story was altered with time, our understanding of all funerary practices is not absolute. There are many theories regarding the burial practices, and many things that we do not know. Many historians argue that the objects found inside the tombs correspond to a level of social class. All we know is just like us, the Mycenaeans hoped that in burying their dead, they were preserving and honoring the life of an individual. For centuries, the Mycenaean people have been burying their dead for timeless reasons. Reasons for grief for the loss of a loved one and the comfort afforded by relatives and friends. The human frailty of wanting to impress others with costliness of offerings, or to stress the superior status of the deceased, and the notion that the identity of the individual does not die, but should be remembered. There are two specific sites that show us a glimpse of what burials would have been like. One, located in Mycenae, Greece, was excavated by German Schliemann. There he found Grave Circle A, a tomb littered with riches and gold. These tombs included funerary masks of gold that would have been reserved for only kings. The famous mask of Agamemnon was found here by Schliemann. Along with the findings of the gold mask, there were gold drinking cups, silver drinking cups. These cups would have been used for wine and symbolized the wealth of the deceased. Warrior tombs included full sets of weapons and swords. Gold jewelry and ornaments of all kinds were also discovered. At one point, the pins and gold ornaments would have held together cloth. Now the cloth has disintegrated, and all that is left are the little gold ornaments and jewelry. These tombs seemed fit for only a king. They included gold rings indicating a seal that was often pressed on clay. The symbolic presence of a double axis or snake-like god figure often indicate that the Mycenaeans had been in contact with the Minoans. Traveling to another historic site, the Agora cemeteries, located in Athens, Greece, also contain many Mycenaean tombs. Situated right below the Acropolis, this historic site contains many thousands of burials, statues, and the temple of Apollo. When I visited the site in 2010, I did not realize the significance of the cemetery or its significance in Mycenaean burial practice. When excavated, the tombs contained large two-handled terracotta jars that would have been filled with wine and honey and oil. The bodies were often covered in honey and oil to preserve, and then wrapped in cloth afterwards. The idea was that these ingredients preserved the body and helped with decay. On the jars were paintings of Greek mythology and Homer's Iliad. There were geometric shapes and animals, specifically horses and chariots. This particular red pot illustrates a chariot. Chariots were common of Mycenaean warfare and critical to victory. Lamps were often found outside the tombs and were usually symbolic of lighting the way for the spirit's journey to the underworld. This lamp here has a floral-like design in the center and horses surrounding the outside. The idea is that nature and light work together, bringing light to the spirit as he goes to the next world. These Mycenaean nurses, or guardian figures, were found in the tombs of children in the Agora cemeteries. These figurines were ornated with designs and intended to guide and look after the dead child as his spirit left this world. These figurines, similar to Minoan snake-like goddesses, also exemplify a communication between the Minoans and Mycenaean peoples. Feeding bottles were also found in tombs of children. These feeding bottles, made of terracotta or clay, were meant to store milk or child's mead.
Inspired by the facial reconstruction of Philip of Macedon, Dr. Elizabeth French wondered, why not Agamemnon? Unfortunately, the remains of the skull found in Grave Circle A beneath the famous mask are too fragmentary to make a reconstruction viable. The only other options available to us for potential facial reconstructions were either the mummy in Shaft Grave 5 or the skeletons discovered in Grave Circle B. 4 archaeologists from the British School at Athens were able to analyze the skeletons from Grave Circle B from 1986 to 1987. And what they found would not only give us a better understanding of how the Greeks looked at the time, but how they were buried according to rank and familial ties. This final section of the documentary serves as a gateway between the old and the new, showing how the use of modern technologies including facial reconstruction, forensic anthropology, and radiocarbon dating allow us to get a better insight into the lives of those that came before us. Buried in soil high in alkali content, the bones found in Grave Circle B were often warped and fragile. In their 2 years of work in Greece, Prague and Nave work with the remains of 7 individuals, 6 female and 1 male. The skeletons were named based on the clusters they were found in and using letters from the Greek alphabet. Before we visit the images of the skulls and see an example of how they are reconstructed, it is useful to discover not only how they are dated, but how we determine their age at death, how we discover if they were related, and how we get an insight into what type of person they were. We date all living organisms through radiocarbon dating. All living organisms are made up of carbon. Plants take in carbon dioxide in order to produce the chemical compounds that we eat, and when we eat them, we take in that same carbon. However, there is more than one form of carbon. When cosmic rays hit nitrogen, it sometimes turns it into carbon-14, a molecule containing 6 protons and 8 neutrons. This molecule is unstable, leading it to decay by 1/2 every 5,730 years. As a result, we can compare ratio of carbon-12 to carbon-14 to date things as old as 60,000 years. When we want to determine the age of a body when it dies, we use factors such as dental eruption and occlusion, cortical bone histology, cranial structure closes, age-related degenerative diseases, and phase changes in the sternal rib, all factors which have shown to have strong links to age. Finally, we can determine familial ties subjectively through the use of similarities of facial features based on our reconstructions or through DNA analysis, creating up to 1 billion DNA copies using polymerase chain reactions and comparing the genes of our specimens. With a basic understanding of the processes behind finding out the secrets the skeletons can tell us, we move on to a video showing the process of facial reconstructions. The processes used in 1986 and 1987 were not so different, and those processes lead us to the following results. The first is an example of gamma 51. And using forensic anthropology, we can determine that he was 28 years old and powerfully built. He was one of the first people we have found to have undergone brain surgery, based on a hole drilled in his head. Because of the lack of healed tissue and bone, it seems the surgery cost him his life. Second is the skull of Sigma 131, a massive skeleton standing 5'9". Scholars maintain the possibility that he may be the mythical Pelops, based on his enormous size. Third is Gamma 55, famous for being the subject associated with the Electrum mask. However, the mask's shape does not seem to match his reconstructed face. This, in addition to the fact that it was next to him, not covering his skull like the 5 others found in Grave Circle A, leads scholars to the belief that it may have been simply used as a sign of power or for another purpose altogether. This final skull is that of Gamma 58, the only female reconstructed. She is a middle-aged adult of 36, also standing quite tall for a woman at 5'3". DNA testing has been promising, helping us to determine with relative certainty the sex on not only the 7 that were reconstructed, but 9 more in circles A and B. In addition, testing has confirmed that Gamma 55 and Gamma 58 are likely cousins, if not brother and sister. This goes along with the forensic evidence that links them facially. Overall, our understanding of how the Mycenaeans looked has changed drastically through the advent of modern technology. Today we are coming far closer to fully understanding a culture that has been so elusive for so long, and it is all a result of the great finds at their burial grounds.